This is a gift placed before me by God, Mr. Obinna thought with excitement. I must enjoy this gift every chance I get. He decided with a bad intentions. In a small African town, there lived a family filled with joy, hoping to grow their family. Chief Mwangi and his wife Adama were anticipating the arrival of their first child with great excitement. One night, as they prepared to welcome a baby boy, they hurried to the nearby hospital. Chief Mwangi waited nervously outside the maternity room, his heart pounding with anticipation until he finally received the news he had been longing for. Dr. Nara, a gentle and skilled doctor, stepped out with a warm smile and said, "Congratulations, you have had a baby boy. Come and meet your son." Mwangi was overwhelmed with happiness at the hospital, grateful for the beautiful gift of a son. He thanked God, expressed his deep gratitude to the doctors who had helped his wife through a successful operation, and gave special thanks to his wife, Madame Adam. With joy shining in his eyes, he gently held the newborn, gazing at him with pride and immediately naming him. "You will be called Obinna," Chief Mwangi declared. Everyone there rejoiced, and the family was soon discharged to return home. Obinna grew into a bright and cheerful child, and being the firstborn, he was the pride of his parents. His charm and kindness brought his family so much happiness, especially to his mother, Madame Adama. Her love for him ran so deep that she would grant him any wish without a second thought. She adored him with all her heart, and with every little request he made, she was ready and willing to provide for him, hoping to see his smile. Chief Mwangi and Madame Adama were prosperous in their community, known for their prosperity and generosity. In their household, there was nothing Obinna could desire that his parents could not give him. They dedicated themselves to giving him the best of everything, believing it was the way to raise a happy child. They spared no effort to keep him happy, never realizing that their endless generosity might harm him morally, spiritually, and physically. One day, during a heated moment at his school, Elm Academy, Obinna injured a fellow classmate. The school administration, concerned for both children, decided to call Obinna's parents to address the situation. When Madame Adama arrived, she was protective of her son and found herself blaming the other child for the incidents without investigating the truth. Using her influence and resources, she quickly resolved the matter in Obinna's favor, silencing any further questions about the incident. As they left the school grounds, she looked lovingly at her son and said, "I love you, my prince," Madame Adama declared. "Thank you, Ma. You really handled it so well," Obinna replied with confidence, as if he had done nothing wrong. They both walked away joyfully, as if nothing had happened. As Obinna grew older, his behavior began to take a turn, troubling both his parents and others in the community. His once cheerful and obedient nature shifted and began to act out, testing boundaries both at home and in public. Influenced by his close friend Tumo, he took up habits that worried those around him, like drinking alcohol and staying out late at night, things that were unusual and disapproved by his family. These changes in behavior were a source of growing concern, but they seemed beyond his parents' immediate control. One day, when Obinna's parents were not at home, Madame Adama had gone shopping at the market, and Chief Mwangi had gone to visit his properties in town. Obinna and Mrs. Zari the housemaid were alone at home as evening approached. While Mrs. Zari was washing the dishes, Mr. Obinna sat across from her, looking at his phone. As soon as he noticed her, a flood of thought filled his mind. This is a gift placed before me by God, Mr. Obinna thought with excitement. I must enjoy this gift every chance I get, he decided with a bad intentions. Without hesitation, Obinna rose and approached Miss Zali, grabbing her hand forcefully, catching her off guard. She was terrified, unable to fully process what was happening, as he dragged her into a private room, closing the door behind them. For Zari, this was a horrible, terrifying experience that left her feeling completely helpless, with no one to turn to for support. Afterward, he looked at her badly, warning her that if she ever mentioned what had happened, he would bury her alive. If you try to tell anyone, I will make sure you disappear forever, Mr. Obinna said with fierce anger. Later that evening, when Obinna's parents returned, Zali went to greet Madame Adama, who had brought various items from the market. Zali walked slowly, her expression troubled, catching Madame Adama's attention. Zali, my beautiful, what's wrong? You don't seem yourself, Madame Adama asked with concern. Zari hesitated, fearful of speaking the truth, aware of how deeply Madame Adama loved her son and feeling certain that her words would not be believed. Madame Adama, still unaware, handed her some fruit and vegetables and instructed, take this inside and prepare dinner early, so my husband finds everything ready when he arrives. Yes, ma, Zali replied. 2 months later, Zali began to feel weaker and unwell, though she did not immediately understand why. She thought it was a temporary illness, brushing it off at first. However, after confiding in a close friend who lived nearby, she realized her condition was much more serious. She was pregnant with Obinna's child. The realization hit her hard, leaving her deeply troubled and doubtful of what to do next. One evening, as the family sat down to dinner, Madame Adama began to serve food to everyone on the table. As soon as the smell of the food reached her, Zari, who was seated nearby, felt an overwhelming wave of nausea. Without a word, she rapidly stood up and rushed to the bathroom, causing everyone to look at her in surprise. Madame Adama, concerned, followed her to see what had happened. When she opened the bathroom door, she found Zari bent over, vomiting, her face pale and filled with discomfort. Furious and suspicious, Madame Adama grabbed Zari by the hand and led her back to the living room, where the rest of the family was seated waiting. With a voice thick with anger, she began interrogating her, demanding to know who had made her pregnant. Zari, trembling and fighting back tears, responded with fear and sorrow. Your son is the one responsible for this pregnancy. Her words hung in the air, shocking everyone present. Madame Adama was speechless for a moment, but quickly turned her anger on Zari, without even questioning her son. She then warned Zari that if she dared tell to anyone, she would send her back to her village and have her jailed, making sure she faced the full consequences of her actions. Without delay, Madame Adama called the doctor who had helped her deliver Obinna, ordering her to come immediately and terminate Zari's pregnancy, without asking for Zari's consent. Come quickly and help me get rid of this disgrace, she said strictly over the phone. Yes, ma'am, consider it done, Dr. Nara replied without hesitation. She arrived immediately and, as instructed, carried out the procedure. Zari wept throughout, long-lasting pain and sadness, feeling completely helpless as the ordeal unfolded. Madame Adama thought she was protecting her family's reputation, shading her son's honor, and keeping his life free of scandal. Her love for him had blinded her, making her believe that these actions were necessary to ensure his happiness and future. But even as she supported him in every wrongdoing, she had no idea she was setting him up for future suffering, digging a deep pit from which he might never escape. Meanwhile, Mr. Obinna continued to mistreat Zari, becoming more hostile with each passing day. He repeatedly threatened her, saying that if she dared speak about what had happened, he would make sure she faced even worse consequences. He reminded her that his parent love would shield him from any consequences, convincing her that no one would believe her. Zari, after all she had been through, she decided to leave the house when she discovered she was pregnant for the third time. This time, she wanted to escape before they forced her to terminate it once again. With sorrow and a heavy heart, she told Madame Adama that they would live to regret everything they had done to her, warning that God would eventually hold them accountable. Obinna's bad behavior continued to grow, becoming a source of concern for those around him. He began spending his nights in bars and other unknown places, distancing himself from his family. One night, while Chief Mwangi was away in another country, Obinna returned home late around 9 p.m., heavily intoxicated and stumbling. His mother, Madame Adama, was alone in her room, preparing for bed, wearing a light nightgown when she heard him enter. As he entered the room, Obinna, oscillating slightly, looked at his mother and commented with a strange smile, "Mother, you look so beautiful tonight." Madame Adama, recognizing her mistakes in spoiling her son's behavior, responded calmly, saying, "Let me get you a drink I prepared for you." That night, Obinna fell into a deep sleep in her mother's room. Early the next morning, Madame Adama sat up in bed, her heart heavy with guilt and sadness, as her son awoke to overhear her on the phone with his father. She spoke through tears, telling Chief Mwangi about what had happened the previous night. "Your son has become a beast," she cried, her voice trembling. "Come quickly and see what he has done to me," Madame Adama said on the phone. "I don't know what to do." Hearing this, Obinna was struck with fear, feeling a weight pressing down on him as he remembered all the terrible things he had done. Thought of how he mistreated their maid Zari flooded his mind, along with memories of his reckless drinking and his shameful behavior. Consumed with guilt, he quickly locked himself in his room, sinking to the floor in tears as he began to realize the depth of his wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Madame Adama felt a mix of relief and sadness. sensing that her son was finally recognizing the errors of his ways. This sight of regret gave her hope that he might be capable of change, and she silently prayed for this transformation. She thought to herself with satisfaction, "The plan worked as I hoped." At that moment, Chief Mwangi returned home, his face marked by anger, and stormed toward Obinna's door, pounding on it with a force that made the walls shake. "Open this door, so I can deal with you myself. Let them throw me in jail afterward. I have nothing more to lose." Chief Mwangi shouted, his anger filling the house. Inside the room, Obinna trembled as he heard his father's voice, realizing he had pushed his family to the brink. Gathering his courage, he unlocked the door, his heart pounding in fear. As soon as the door opened, Chief Mwangi, captivating a wooden cane, raised it to strike him. But at that moment, Madame Adama intervened, stepping between them and pleading with her husband. "Please forgive him," she begged, her voice filled with desperation. "He may have gone astray, but he is still our son." They moved to the living room, where the family sat together in tense silence. Obinna, overwhelmed with shame, knelt down in front of his parent, his hands trembling as he humbly asked for their forgiveness. His voice shook as he promised that if they granted him a second chance, he would leave behind his bad habit and start anew. He promised he would change his ways, both within their home and out in the world. His parents listened, their hearts softening, and after a moment they forgave him, asking only that he put up his promise and find work to support himself. The next day, the news of Obinna's past misdeeds spread throughout the town, reaching his friends and neighbors. Everywhere he went, he could hear people whispering about his actions, and the weight of their judgment settled heavily upon him. With each encounter, he was reminded of the mistakes he had made, and the shame of becoming a topic of gossip only deepened his regret. Determined to redeem himself, Obinna began a journey of self-reflection, seeking ways to develop compassion and self-discipline. He hoped that by performing acts of kindness and striving to be better, he might eventually erase the image of his past. 9 months passed, and during this time, Madame Adama's strength gradually declined as her pregnancy progressed. Eventually, the time came for her to deliver, and late one evening, Chief Mwangi accompanied her to the same nearby hospital, where she had once given birth to Obinna. They were filled with memories of that joyful day, but this time their hearts were more dignified, reflecting on all the lessons they had learned since then. Obinna, left alone at home, sat in silence, overwhelmed by a mix of regret and sorrow as he waited the arrival of his child. Not long after, Chief Mwangi received the joyful news that they had a healthy baby girl who looked strikingly similar to her brother Obinna, almost as if they were twins. The doctors and nurses were amazed at her beauty, and the family felt a renewed sense of happiness and gratitude. With hearts full of joy, they thanked the medical team, praised God for the safe delivery, and soon returned home to introduce their daughter to the family. However, despite the joy of his sister's birth, Obinna found himself unable to truly celebrate or even hold the newborn in his arms. Each time he looked at her, he felt an unshakable sense of guilt and saw her as a constant reminder of his past wrongdoings. He struggled with memories of how she was conceived under troubling circumstances, troubled by thought of the secret his parent has hidden from him. Not aware that his journey of regret and transformation was slowly leading him to become a better person, Obinna carried this guilt as he strove to leave behind the reckless behaviors of his youth. About a month after the baby's birth, Chief Mwangi and Madame Adama organized a grand celebration, inviting friends, family, and neighbors to formally introduce their daughter to the community and give her a name. Guests arrived in colorful attire, bringing gifts and blessings for the baby, filling the house with the laughter and music. However, Obinna sat quietly in a corner, reflecting deeply on the mistakes he had made, still wondering what had led him down such a dark path, not knowing that this celebration would bring about a profound turning point in his life. As the evening unfolded, with the people singing, dancing, and enjoying the meal, Chief Mwangi stood up to make an announcement. Raising his glass, he asked everyone for their attention and said, "Let us give thanks to God for blessing us with a second child, whom we have named Amara." He continued, "Please join us in welcoming her into our family and celebrating this gift." A ripple of curiosity spread through the group as guests exchanged glances and whispered, eager to understand the deeper meaning of his words. Sensing the anticipation, Madame Adama rose to speak, her face glowing with a mixture of gratitude and humility. "This child Amara is more than just our second born," she began. "He is the answer to a question that has weighed heavily in our heart for a long time." Taking a deep breath, she explained, "For years, we worried about how our son would find his way and become the person we always hoped he would be. Amala's arrival has brought light to this dark path." She continued, sharing with the guests how that fateful night, Obinna had come home heavily intoxicated, not aware of the careful laid plan she had prepared with her husband. When he drank it, he drifted into a deep sleep, not aware to the trap that would set his life on a new course. She had lovingly covered him with a blanket, then quietly left the room, knowing that this would allow him to experience the weight of his actions fully. Overwhelmed by the depth of his parents' love and the sacrifice they had made to help him see his mistakes, Obinna stood up, his eyes filled with tears, and walked over to his parents. In a voice thick with emotion, he embraced them tightly and thanked them, recognizing the impact of their actions. "To everyone here, I ask for forgiveness," he said, his voice shaking. "I was once lost, but now I have been found. I was living in darkness, but now I see the light. I'm no longer the person I once was. He paused, looking around the room, then added, "Please forgive me for the pain I caused. I'm deeply grateful to my parents for helping me find my way back." Madame Adama, overcome with emotion, addressed the guest, expressing her gratitude for their support, and then turning to her son and Zari, she offered a heartfelt apology. "My son, forgive me. I see now that I contributed to this path you walked," she said with tears in her eyes. "I raised you without boundaries, giving you freedom without guiding you, covering up your mistakes rather than correcting you. I thought this was how love was shown, but I realize now that I was wrong." She then turned to Zarin, who was stood quietly, absorbing the sincerity of the moment. With deep regret, she said, "Zari, my dear, I ask for your forgiveness as well, for allowed harm to come to you, and I failed to protect you when you needed it most." With trembling hands and tears streaming down her face, Madame Adama knelt before Zari, her voice breaking as she asked for her forgiveness, vowing to make amends for the pain she had caused. The guests looked on, touched by the genuineness of the family's reconciliation, celebrating this rare moment of forgiveness and healing. They praised Madame Adama for rediscovering her true role as a parent, and they applauded Obinna for his newfound humility and commitment to becoming a better person. The gathering continued with renewed joy as people feasted, laughed, and shared in the family's journey toward healing. For the first time, Obinna felt a deep sense of peace and happiness as he held his newborn sister, Amara, in his arms, vowing to be a better person for her sake. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a comment and let us know where you are from. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to support us.